Tonight we don't look up at ancient stone. We don't decipher glyphs or puzzle over pottery shards. Tonight, we look down, and then across. A dizzying, breath-stealing gulf opens before you, a raw tear in the earth carved by a river so far below it sounds like a perpetual whisper. The Andean wind, sharp and thin at this altitude, pushes at your back. It wants you to move. But the only path forward is a thing that seems to defy not just engineering, but sense itself. A slender, swaying ribbon of woven grass, stretching over the void. This is an Inca rope bridge. It has no nails, no planks, no steel. It is a live, breathing thing made from dead grass, and it is the only way across. You are about to learn that crossing it isn't just a test of balance, it's an act of faith in a forgotten science. You'll have to trust the patience of hands that worked centuries ago, the strength of fibers that should, by all rights, have rotted away, and the communal memory of people who saw a gap in the world and said, "We will stitch it shut." So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not a tourist with a harness and a waiver. You're a subject of the Sapa Inca, the emperor, or perhaps a Amite labor fulfilling your rotational duty. The year is nebulous, somewhere in the 15th century, the height of Tawantinsuyu, the Inca Empire. The place is a quebrada, one of the countless deep ravines that slash across the Andes like the claw marks of some titanic god. This terrain doesn't just hinder travel, it mocks it. You can see your destination, a trail continuing on the opposite cliff face, maybe 200 feet away. To go around would take days of brutal descent and ascent. The empire runs on speed and control. Days are not an option. So you stand before the Huachuaca or the Choca, the bridge. Your stomach does a small, unpleasant flip. It looks temporary. Insultingly so. The handrails are two thick cables of twisted fiber, the deck a mat of smaller ropes and sticks. The whole structure droops in a deep, graceful catenary curve, which means the middle sags the most. You'll be walking down into the abyss before walking back up. It sways in a lazy, broad arc, moved by the wind and the memory of the last person who crossed. There are gaps between the sticks on the deck. You will see right through them to the distant, silver thread of river. Your modern mind, cluttered with safety standards and liability laws, screams that this is a death trap. You probably won't survive this, it whispers. But the line of people behind you, the keepers carrying messenger waiting impatiently, the herd of llamas snorting softly, they all say otherwise. This is the highway. The main street. The interstate. Here's your first mainstream historical fact to cling to. The Inca Empire, at its peak, maintained a road network of over 40,000 kilometers, arguably the greatest in the pre-industrial world. But these roads were useless without bridges. Over deep rivers and canyons, they built perhaps hundreds of these fiber suspension bridges. They were the critical, sinewy joints connecting the empire's bony spine of stone-paved trails. You know what the most advanced bridge-building material in the Andes was? It wasn't a metal or a mineral. It was grass. Specifically, a tough, wiry bunch grass called ichu that thrives in the high-altitude puna. The Inca didn't have the wheel, they didn't have iron, but they had an intimate, PhD-level understanding of tensile strength and fiber torsion. They looked at the stuff a goat nibbles on and saw the threads to sew a continent together. Historians still argue whether these bridges were primarily military infrastructure for moving troops, or economic arteries for moving goods and information. The truth, as you'll feel in your shaky knees, is probably both. But right now, for you, it's purely personal. It's about the first step. You place a foot on the woven deck. It gives, like a stiff hammock. The whole bridge groans a little, a deep, organic sound, like a tree bending. You take another step, and now you're committed. The sway becomes a part of your own rhythm. You don't fight it, you flow with it. You become a pendulum weight. Your hands grip the handrail cables, which are thicker than your thigh and surprisingly dry and rough. You look straight ahead at the opposite anchor point, a stark outcrop of rock. You do not look down. And as you begin this slow, swaying pilgrimage across emptiness, you realize something profound. This bridge isn't a static monument. It's not Machu Picchu, frozen in stone. It's alive. It moves. It wears out. It requires constant conversation with the people who use it. It is an agreement, renewed with every crossing. This is the patient art we're exploring tonight. Not the art of building something to last forever, but the art of building something to last just long enough, with the sacred, baked-in understanding that you, or your children, or your community, will have to come back and build it again. It's a cycle. A promise. A breath. In and out. Build, use, renew. You are walking on a heartbeat. Your journey across the void begins not with a step, but with a stoop. Long before a single fiber is twisted for the great cables, you are on your knees on the high, cold plain. This is the Puna, a landscape that feels like the top of the world because it practically is. The air is thin and scours your lungs clean. The sky is a dome of impossible blue, and the wind doesn't blow here. It whips, carrying the scent of cold stone and dry earth. You are not an engineer yet. You are a harvester. And your treasure is the unassuming, tufted clumps of ichu grass that dot the harsh ground, silver green and deceptively fragile looking. This is the raw material. This is where the patience truly starts. Forget steel mills and sawmills. The factory for an Inca rope bridge is a windswept hillside, and the machinery is human hands, guided by a tradition so old it feels instinctual. You are with a group from the Ailu, the community obligated to maintain this particular bridge. There's a rhythm to this work, a slow, methodical pace that respects the land and the material. You don't just hack at the grass. You select. Your eyes learn to spot the mature ichu stalks, the ones that have endured a full seasonal cycle, soaking up the fierce sun and resisting the killing frost. They are tougher, their fibers longer and more resilient. The younger, greener stalks are left to grow, to mature for next year's harvest, or the renewal after that. This is the first covenant. Take only what is ready, and leave the rest for the future. You gather great armfuls of the stuff. It's scratchy against your skin, and the edges of the blades can slice a careless finger. You carry your bundles to a central clearing, where the piles grow into golden haystacks that rustle and sigh with every gust. The harvest isn't just a practical chore, it's often timed and ritualized. In some communities, the gathering was done under a specific moon, or begun with a small offering to Pachamama, Mother Earth, thanking her for her hair, because that's what the grass is, in a way. The Earth's own hair, woven into a lifeline. They'd maybe bury a few coca leaves or pour a tiny libation of chicha into the soil before the first pull. You don't just take. You ask. You give thanks. It's a subtle mindset, one that imbues the entire project with a sense of sacred reciprocity from the very first handful. Now, the mainstream historical fact anchoring this grassy endeavor. The Inca state was a master of organized labor through the MITA system. It wasn't slavery, it was a rotational tax paid in work. Every household owed a certain number of days per year to state projects, building roads, terraces, temples, or bridges. This bridge you're harvesting grass for? Its maintenance is someone's MITA duty. You might be here because it's your family's turn, your village's responsibility. This transforms the project from a construction job into a civic and spiritual obligation. You're not getting paid in coin. You're paying your dues to the community and the empire, ensuring the threads that bind you all together remain strong. The work is silent, meditative. The only sounds are the rustle of grass, the low murmur of conversation, the constant sigh of the wind. Your back begins to ache from the bending. Your fingers grow raw. You look at the mountain of grass and try, futilely, to imagine it as a bridge. It seems an alchemical impossibility. How could this brittle, sun-bleached straw hold the weight of 100 people, a train of llamas laden with goods? The gap between the raw material and the finished wonder feels unbridgeable itself. It requires a leap of faith. But you keep gathering. Because everyone else is. Because your parents did this. Their parents before them. This grass, this ritual, is a thread in time. Historians still argue whether the specific knowledge of which grass to use and how to prepare it was held by specialized guilds of bridge makers, or if it was common knowledge passed through every family in the maintenance communities. Was there a bridge master who traveled the empire, or did each canyon have its own local experts, their techniques subtly adapted to the specific issue of their region? As you select another stalk, you feel the weight of that debate. This knowledge is in your hands now. You're learning it by doing it, by feeling the right stiffness, the correct length. It feels less like being taught and more like remembering. Finally, the last bundle is tossed onto the pile. The harvest is complete. The sun is lower now, casting long shadows from the grass stacks, turning them into strange, shaggy monuments. Your hands are crisscrossed with fine, stinging cuts. You're cold, tired, and covered in a fine dust of grass fragments. You look at the monumental task ahead, turning this into rope, and a part of you quails. But another part, deeper down, feels a quiet satisfaction. The first, most fundamental connection has been made. Your labor is now literally woven into the landscape. You have taken the first patient step. You have gathered the breath that will become the bridge's song. Tomorrow, the twisting begins. The mountain of harvested ichu grass now sits in the clearing, a tawny, sun-bleached beast waiting to be tamed. Your hands, still smarting from the harvest, now face their true trial. This is where magic happens. Not the wand-waving kind, but the slow, muscular, profoundly intelligent magic of transforming fragility into immense, tensile strength. You are about to learn the art of the twist. Forget machines. The tool is your own body, a wooden spindle maybe, and the collective rhythm of the working group. You are turning grass into rope, and not just any rope, cables that will soon laugh in the face of gravity. The process is deceptively simple in description, brutally demanding in practice. You take a bundle of ichu, maybe as thick as your wrist. You dampen it slightly, not too much, or it will rot from the inside later. Then, sitting on the ground, you begin to roll it against your thigh, twisting the fibers upon themselves. It's a motion that is half massage, half grinding. At first, the bundle is loose, unruly. But as you twist, the fibers begin to bite into each other. They compact. The bundle shrinks in diameter and grows longer, tighter. This is the creation of the elementary cord, the kuoya. Your thigh grows warm, then hot, from the friction. The rough grass abrades your palms, seeking out every soft spot. Blisters are not a possibility, they are a guarantee. They are your first badge of participation in this ancient alchemy. But a single cord is nothing. Strength comes from combination. Here's where the engineering genius blooms. You take 3 of these elementary cords. Now, with a partner, you begin to twist them together in the opposite direction from how each individual cord was first spun. This is the key. Twisting the cords one way gives them integrity. Twisting the bundled cords the other way locks that integrity in. It creates a dynamic tension, a balanced counterforce that prevents the whole thing from spontaneously unraveling. This second-order rope, a sangha, is now significantly stronger. The process repeats. 3 Sangha ropes are twisted together, again reversing the direction of the twist, to form a massive cable called a QSW. This is the building block of the bridge. One of these final cables is as thick as a man's torso, a dense, living braid of countless thousands of grass stems. The work is communal, rhythmic, almost musical. Teams sit in lines, passing the growing rope back and forth, their movements synchronized by grunts or chants. The sound is a dry, rasping symphony of fiber against fiber, punctuated by the shuffle of feet bracing against the pull. It's a full-body workout disguised as craftsmanship. You lean back, using your body weight to maintain tension. The rope begins to have a life of its own, a stored energy you can feel in your hands. Let go of the tension at the wrong moment, and the whole thing can kink or whip back with a violence that can bruise or break skin. You learn respect for the material not through theory, but through the smarting lesson of a snapped cord. While everyone was focused on the massive handrails and deck cables, the Inca bridge engineers had a secret weapon for the finest, most delicate work: their toes. Seriously. When weaving the intricate, tight mesh for the side panels or the finer parts of the deck, artisans would often use their bare feet to tension the small cords, their toes as deft as fingers. Imagine that scene: a builder suspended over a canyon, hands busy weaving, using the prehensile grip of a foot to pull a cord taut. It speaks to a level of bodily integration with their craft that is humbling. They used every tool they had, down to the digits. The mainstream fact grounding all this sweat and twisted fiber is the principle of the suspension bridge itself. While the complex mathematics of the modern form came later, the Inca understood the core concept perfectly: a bridge that carries its load via tension in cables suspended between towers. Their genius was adapting this concept to a material, plant fiber, that most cultures would consider hopelessly temporary. They worked with its flexibility, its need for give, rather than fighting it with rigid masonry. They built structures that could sway, dissipating wind energy and seismic shocks that would topple a stone arch. A stone bridge fights the forces of nature. A rope bridge dances with them. Historians still argue whether the exact patterns of twisting, the specific number of elementary cords per bundle, the sacredness of the 3-ply pattern, were strictly codified by imperial engineers or varied from valley to valley, a kind of regional dialect of rope making. As you feel the developing cable in your raw hands, you sense it could be both. There is a fundamental, correct way to do this that simply works, discovered through millennia of trial and error. But there's also room for the slight variation, the local accent in the tightness of the twist, the way a knot is finished. The bridge, in the end, must satisfy 2 masters: the unyielding laws of physics, and the particular spirit of the place it connects. By the end of days of this work, your hands are leathery maps of pain and accomplishment. Piles of sleek, powerful QSW cables lie coiled like resting serpents in the grass. They are inert, yet thrum with potential energy. They don't look like much yet. But you know. You felt their strength being born in the twist of your wrists, the strain in your back. You have taken the whisper of the wind through the grass and given it a voice, a deep, groaning bass note of tensile might. The raw material is ready. Now, it needs a place to sing. With the great cables coiled and waiting, heavy as sleeping anacondas, the project shifts from creation to placement. And placement begins with a quest. You are no longer a harvester or a rope maker. You are a scout. Your job is to find the bones of the earth that will accept the bridge's sinews. You follow the bridge master, an older man whose eyes don't just see the landscape. They read it, like a map of hidden strengths. You are looking for anchor points. Not just any rock will do. This is where the patient art meets unyielding geology, and the conversation is a silent, serious one. You trek along the rim of the canyon, a nerve-wracking path that is often no path at all. You scramble over scree slopes that shift treacherously underfoot. You inch along narrow ledges where a misstep sends a cascade of pebbles whispering down into the void. The wind here is a bully, shoving you playfully toward the edge. All the while, you are assessing the cliff face. You're not looking for beauty. You're looking for character. For steadfastness. You need a promontory, a natural buttress of bedrock that is not just part of the mountain but is the mountain's very fist, clenched stubbornly against time. It must be large enough to handle the enormous lateral pull of the bridge cables, which will exert a force trying to drag the entire rock mass into the gorge. It must be solid, free of major cracks or fissures where water has seeped in and worked its patient, destructive magic. A fractured anchor is a death sentence, deferred. The bridge master runs his hands over the stone, feeling its grain. He might strike it with another rock, listening to the tone. A dull thud is bad, a clear, ringing talk is good. He's looking for what engineers now call competent rock. He finds it, two massive, opposing pillars of stone, one on your side, one on the far side of the gap. They are the sentinels of the crossing. They were here millennia before the first humans stood on this cliff, and they will be here long after. The bridge is a temporary guest on their eternal bodies. The relationship must be one of respect. Here's a mainstream historical fact to root this scouting mission. The Inca were phenomenal stonemasons, famous for fitting multi-ton blocks together without mortar so tightly you can't slip a credit card between them. But with their rope bridges, they often did the opposite. Instead of fabricating massive stone abutments, they found them. They used the natural topography with an elegant efficiency. It was a form of ecological engineering, integrating their structure into the existing environment with minimal alteration. Why build what the earth has already provided, perfectly and for free? This principle of working with the terrain, rather than conquering it, is a hallmark of their infrastructure. How did they actually secure the cables to these immovable stone anchors? They didn't have steel bolts or expansion rings. The solution was often deceptively simple. They used the rock's own shape. They would seek out natural horns of stone, or chisel a narrow channel or a series of notches into the bedrock. The massive QSW cable would be looped around this stone horn or woven through these notches in a complex pattern of friction hitches and knots. Not so large and load-bearing, they were more like topographic features of the rope itself. Sometimes, they'd construct a low stone wall or a timber framework around the cable ends to distribute the load and protect them from the weather. But the primary grip was pure friction and clever geometry, stone holding grass in a permanent, trusting handshake. But before any of that can happen, you have to get a line across. And as you stand on your chosen anchor point, looking at its twin 200 feet away across a gulf of roaring air, the impossibility of the task hits you afresh. You have these colossal cables, each weighing hundreds of pounds. How do you even begin to ferry the first thread of connection over there? Historians still argue whether the primary method for establishing the initial pilot line was via a kite, a sling, or simply a very brave swimmer in the river below who then scaled the far cliff. The kite theory is captivating, using the Andean winds to sail a light cord over the gap. The sling theory is more visceral. Their best hurler, using a weighted cord, attempting a throw of staggering distance and accuracy. Perhaps it was a combination. Throw a line down to a swimmer, who then carries it across and up. You stand with the bridge master, holding a ball of light, strong cord made from ichu or perhaps llama leather. This is the seed. The future bridge, in all its tons of grass, is contained in this slender thread. The wind tugs at it. The distance mocks it. The bridge master takes it from you, his face calm. He's done this before. Or his father has. He assesses the wind, picks his spot. He either ties it to a small stone and fits it into his sling, or he attaches it to a simple, leafy kite frame. This is the moment of purest faith. He sends the messenger on its way. You watch, heart in your throat, as that tiny, vulnerable line arcs out over the abyss, a spider's first silk on a stormy day. It seems to hang in the air forever, a symbol of hope against the immense, indifferent scale of the canyon. Then, it falls. It lands on the far side, is grabbed by waiting hands. A faint cheer, whipped away by the wind, echoes back. The connection is made. The first breath has been drawn across the gap. The stitching of the earth can now begin in earnest. That first, slender cord now spans the void, a taut, trembling thread vibrating with the wind's song. It seems a ridiculous foundation for what is to come. But in engineering, as in life, you have to start with a whisper before you can build a shout. This line is the prototype, the scout, the neural pathway. Everything that follows will travel along it. You are about to witness the bridge's birth, a process that turns the terrifying into the methodical, one careful pull at a time. The team on the far side now ties a slightly heavier rope to the end of the pilot line. On your side, you begin to pull. Hand over hand, you haul the new, stronger line across. It's a slow, muscular process. The rope bites into your palms, the friction heating your skin. This new line is now the workhorse. To it, you attach something even heavier, perhaps one of the lighter Sunga ropes. You signal, and the pull begins again. Each cycle uses the previous line to drag across a stronger one. It's a process of incremental escalation, a patient bootstrap operation that turns a piece of string into a cable capable of bearing real weight. You can feel the bridge's potential growing in the thickening rope passing through your hands, in the deepening groan of the anchorage as it accepts more and more strain. Now comes a critical, heart-stopping transition. One of the main QSWA cables, the ones you spent days twisting, must make the journey. It is colossal, unwieldy, a beast of woven grass. You cannot simply tie it on and pull. Its weight might snap the hauling line, or it could snag and tumble into the gorge, lost. The solution is elegant. You lash the great cable to the hauling line at multiple points, distributing the stress. Then, with a team of 20 or 30 people on your side, and an equal team pulling from the opposite bank to guide it, you begin the pull. This is not hand over hand anymore. This is a communal heave. You plant your feet, lean back, and walk slowly, steadily backward, a human capstan. The cable, thick as a tree trunk, resists. It drags along the ground, a rustling, groaning serpent being coaxed from its lair. The sound is immense, a dry, rasping thunder. You watch as its head, the leading end, reaches the edge of the cliff. This is the moment of truth. It must lift off from the ground and travel, unsupported, through the air to the far side. The teams synchronize their pull. The cable tightens, rises, and then it is airborne. It sags into its natural catenary curve, a deep, swooping arc across the canyon. A profound, bass note hum joins the wind's chorus, the sound of thousands of grass fibers taking the strain. The first of the great handrail cables is in place. The process is repeated for the second handrail cable, parallel to the first. Now, the skeleton of the bridge exists. Two lines, defining a space. An idea made manifest in fiber. Here's your mainstream historical fact for this sweaty, pivotal work. This method of incremental cable deployment, using a light pilot line to pull progressively heavier lines, is essentially the same principle used today to deploy undersea fiber optic cables and the massive steel cables of modern suspension bridges. The technology has scaled up with winches and motors, but the core logic, the patient bootstrap, is ancient and universal. The Inca were practicing fundamental engineering physics with materials they found at their feet. What did they use as lubrication for these gargantuan pulling operations, to prevent the grass cables from fraying or burning from friction? One likely substance was llama fat. Rendered down, It provided a slick, organic grease that protected the fibers during the intense stress of installation. So picture the scene: teams of people heaving, the air filled with grunts and the smell of dusty grass and warm animal fat, a sacred bridge being borne through sheer, greased, communal effort. It's a wonderfully unglamorous, utterly practical detail. With the two main cables anchored fast on both sides, a new phase begins. You need a deck. But you can't just lay one down. You have to build it in situ, in mid-air. This requires the first act of true bravery. A small team, often the most experienced and agile, now uses the newly installed handrail cables. They loop leather straps or smaller ropes over the cables, creating makeshift harnesses or foot loops. And then, they step off the edge. They become spiders, hanging from the upper cables, their feet searching for purchase on the lower ones. Their job is to string the first lateral ropes that will form the foundation of the walkway. Historians still argue whether these first workers used any form of safety line beyond their own grip and balance. The prevailing, gut-churning thought is that they likely did not. Their safety was their skill, their focus, and the collective belief of the community watching from the cliffs, holding its breath. It was a test of nerve that filtered the bridge crew, creating an instant, unspoken hierarchy of courage and competence. You watch them, these human pendulums swinging gently in the immense space. They call to each other, short, clipped words eaten by the wind. They pass thinner ropes back and forth, beginning to weave a loose net between the two main cables. This is the genesis of the footwalk. It is slow, deliberate, a dance with a very specific, very fatal penalty for a misstep. From this fragile, swinging net, the solid deck will grow. But for now, it is just a sketch over the abyss, drawn by the bodies of the brave. The bridge is no longer an idea or a cable. It is now a workplace, and its first laborers are walking on air. You are no longer just a spectator on the cliffside. The bridge master nods to you. It's your turn. The initial, brave spiders have woven a skeletal grid of ropes between the two main cables, a trapeze net over oblivion. Now, that net needs to become a road. You are handed a bundle of smaller, stiff itchy ropes and a long, straight stick of chachacomo or other hardy wood. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drum trying to escape the cage of your chest. You approach the edge where the great cables are anchored. You loop a safety cord, a recent, merciful innovation in your mind, around one of the main cables and your waist. It feels flimsy. Then, you step onto the nascent web. The world tilts. The first sensation is not of height, but of movement. The entire structure sways with a slow, deep, oceanic rhythm. It's not a shaking, it's a rolling undulation that starts at your feet and travels up your spine. You are not standing on something solid. You are standing on a liquid made of tension and fiber. Your stomach lurches. You grip the handrail cable with white-knuckled force. It's rough and solid, the only constant in this shifting universe. Below, through the gaps in the rope grid, the river is a distant, silver scribble. Don't look. The bridge master's first and only rule: look ahead, or look at your hands. Never down. Your job is to weave the deck. You shuffle forward, inch by inch, to where the more experienced weavers are working. You see the pattern. The grid of ropes is the warp. Your bundle of smaller ropes and the sticks are the weft. Sitting or crouching on the grid itself, an act of faith that makes your legs tremble, you begin. You take a stick and lay it perpendicular across the grid, maybe a foot in front of the last one placed. Then, with a length of rope, you lash it down to the grid at both ends, using quick, tight knots your fingers remember before your brain does. Pull tight. Always pull tight. Slack is the enemy. It creates bounce, instability, a sense of treachery underfoot. Then you take a rope from your bundle. You weave it over and under the longitudinal ropes of the grid, parallel to the handrails, creating a tight, matted surface. You pack it down with your hands. The work is monotonous, meditative, and terrifying. The monotony is a gift. It forces your mind to focus on the simple, repetitive task. Pick, weave, pull, knot, pack. The terror becomes a background hum, like the wind. You start to sync your movements with the bridge's sway. You lean when it leans. You become part of its system. Your weight is no longer an opposing force, it's a component of the balance. You are, quite literally, weaving yourself into the bridge. Here's a mainstream historical fact that becomes viscerally real as you work. The Inca did not use the wheel for transportation. But here, suspended in air, you understand why. This bridge is not a highway for wheels. It's a pathway for feet, for hooves, for human porters called cargadores. Its design reflects the biomechanics of walking and the sure-footedness of llamas. The spaced sticks and woven rope provide a perfect, grippy surface for bare or sandaled feet and cloven hoofs. A wheel would catch, jam, and destabilize everything. This is a bridge for the organic, the rhythmic, the living step. Every part of its construction echoes the pace of a walking human or a plodding train of llamas. What did the builders eat while doing this death-defying work? Lunch up here wasn't a leisurely picnic. They likely had simple, high-energy food that could be easily carried and eaten with one hand while the other gripped a cable. Think ciachuno, freeze-dried potatoes, handfuls of toasted maize, or chunks of dried llama meat. They'd drink water or chicha from a gourd, hooked to their belt. No elaborate meals, no hot soup. Just fuel. And they'd have to be careful of crumbs. A piece of ciachuno dropped wouldn't just be wasted. Watching it spiral down and down and down into the gorge was a stark, silent reminder of the consequence of a slip. It was a snack with a side of existential perspective. As the hours pass, the deck grows behind you, a narrow, golden-brown carpet unfurling into the misty middle of the canyon. You look back and feel a dizzying pride. You made that. Your knots are in that. But you can't stop. The teams work from both ends toward the middle. Historians still argue whether the final meeting in the center was a moment of great ceremony, with a specific ritual or offering, or simply a pragmatic lashing together followed by a weary, relieved sigh. Given the Incan worldview that blended the practical and the sacred so seamlessly, it was likely both. The final connecting knot would be tied, perhaps with a whispered prayer to the Apis, the mountain spirits, asking for their protection over all who would cross this new stitch in the earth's fabric. Finally, your team and the team from the far side meet in the middle. The last stick is laid. The last knot is pulled taut. There is no dramatic clasping of hands, you're all too busy holding on. But there are nods, smiles that are more like grimaces of exhausted triumph. The bridge is complete. A continuous path of fiber now links two worlds that were, just days ago, separated by an uncrossable gulf. You are sitting in the very center, at the lowest point of the sag. The sway here is most pronounced. It feels like sitting on the pendulum of a giant, slow clock. You look toward one end, then the other. The bridge is no longer a project. It is a fact. And tomorrow, it will have to prove itself. You are standing on the completed bridge, but you are not crossing it yet. You are listening. You are feeling. The bridge is alive beneath your feet, and it is speaking in a language of groans, creaks, and shudders. To the untrained body, it feels like impending collapse. To the knowing ear, it is a symphony of stability. This is where you move from builder to listener, learning the physics of a living structure. The impatient modern mind wants rigidity, absolute stillness. The bridge teaches you the profound wisdom of controlled flexibility. Feel that deep, side-to-side sway? That's not a flaw, it's the bridge's primary defense mechanism. A stiff structure, like a stone arch or a modern steel beam bridge, resists force until it catastrophically fails. This rope bridge absorbs force by moving with it. When a fierce Andean wind, known as a huayra, screams up the canyon, it doesn't hit a wall. It hits a sail that gives way. The bridge leans into the wind, dissipating its energy through its entire length and into the anchor rocks, which themselves have a minute, forgiving flexibility. The wind's attempt to destroy the bridge becomes a dance partner. The same principle applies to earthquakes, pachacuti, the turning over of the world. The ground shakes, but the bridge, suspended and flexible, rides the waves like a boat on a choppy sea, while rigid structures on land crack and tumble. Now, walk a few steps. Feel the bounce? That vertical give is equally deliberate. As you place your foot, the deck depresses slightly, storing energy like a spring. As you lift your foot, it rebounds. This does two things. First, it makes the walking surface forgiving on joints, a critical feature for porters carrying heavy loads over long distances. Second, it distributes the load dynamically. Your weight isn't a static point of stress. It's a moving pulse that travels along the cables, shared by the entire structure and ultimately transferred as a gentle, rocking pull into the massive anchor stones. The bridge is not holding you up. It is sharing you with the earth, slowly, kindly. Here's your mainstream historical fact, now felt in your bones. The Inca Empire was constructed in one of the most seismically active zones on the planet. Their entire architectural philosophy was shaped by this reality. They built structures that could withstand seismic events, from trapezoidal doors and windows in their stonework to these flexible, dynamic bridges. Their engineering was a dialogue with instability. They didn't seek to create monuments to permanence in a world they knew was impermanent. They created resilient, adaptable systems that could endure through change. The rope bridge is the ultimate expression of this, a structure that is, in essence, a controlled catastrophe of tension, constantly negotiating its own survival. The Ichu grass cables aren't just strong, they are smart in ways that modern synthetics aren't. As the humidity changes, from the dry, cold nights to the occasional mist or rain, the grass fibers expand and contract slightly. This constant, tiny movement within the cable actually helps to settle the twists and knots, making them tighter over time, up to a point. It's a process called bedding in. Furthermore, the natural oils and saps in the grass provide a degree of water resistance, and the tight twisting creates a dense, thatch-like exterior that sheds rain, protecting the drier core. The bridge maintains itself through its own organic responses to the environment. It's a lesson in biomimicry millennia before the term was coined. But all this flexibility has a limit. The bridge is a balance of tensions, and like any relationship under constant strain, it requires maintenance. The dance has rules. Historians still argue whether the Incas had a precise, scheduled understanding of material fatigue, or if maintenance was purely reactive, fixing things when they looked worn or when a village elder had a dream about a fraying cable. Given their meticulous state organization, it's likely a blend, scheduled community inspections tied to the agricultural or ceremonial calendar, combined with a shared, vigilant awareness of the bridge's health. Everyone who crossed was a diagnostician, feeling for a new vibration, hearing a novel creak, spotting a section of deck that had grown too supple. You run your hand along the main cable at the point where it meets the stone anchor. This is the stress point, where movement is greatest. You can see the slight wear, the polished sheen on the grass fibers from constant, tiny friction. This is where the bridge whispers its needs. It might need a new lashing here, a supplemental wrap of rope to reinforce the friction hitch. The deck behind you, where you and hundreds of others have walked, is already compacted, a little more worn than the newer sections. It will need extra weaving, a fresh layer of sticks. The bridge isn't decaying. It's communicating. It tells you where it hurts. Your job, as part of the community that birthed it, is to listen and to heal. You are not just a user of infrastructure. You are its caregiver. The line between the built and the living has truly, utterly blurred. All this talk of maintenance leads us to a place where time doesn't just slow down, it loops back on itself. You've experienced the building of a new bridge. Now, witness its rebirth. Travel with me to a specific canyon in the Cusco region, 4 days each year when the past doesn't just inform the present, it becomes the present. This is the Quechua Festival. The last remaining great Inca rope bridge is not repaired here. It is dismantled and entirely rewoven, from anchor to anchor, in a breathtaking ritual of communal memory. This is maintenance elevated to a sacrament. You arrive in the days before the festival. The old bridge, last year's incarnation, still hangs across the Apurimac River Canyon. It looks weary, dignified, its grass cables bleached pale by a year of sun and wind. The surrounding communities, Huinchiri, Chorpibanda, Choquehua, and Kalana, are abuzz. This is their MITA, their sacred duty, but it's also their identity. For 4 days, the modern world, with its steel bridges and internal combustion engines, recedes. The rhythm of life is set by the twist of fiber and the pull of a rope. On the first morning, a Paco, an Andean priest, makes an offering to the APU of the canyon and to Pachamama. He gives thanks for the old bridge's service and asks for protection in building the new one. This isn't a tourist show, it's a sincere, solemn plea for safety and success. Then, with a startling lack of ceremony, the dismantling begins. Men carefully cut the old deck lashings and handrail connections. The bridge, which seemed so solid, is reduced to its constituent cables in a matter of hours. The old cables are not thrown away. They are treated with respect, often cut into smaller pieces and taken home as talismans or used in household repairs. The soul of the old bridge is dispersed into the community, its strength seeding their homes. Now, the process you've lived through, harvesting, twisting, anchoring, weaving, unfolds at a compressed, feverish pace. But it's not chaotic. It's a choreographed dance where every step is prescribed by tradition. Women are busy preparing the ichu grass, their hands a blur of stripping and sorting. Men, divided into teams on both sides of the canyon, are twisting the cables simultaneously, their chants and grunts echoing off the walls. The sound is a constant, powerful hum of industry. The first thin line is flung across, not with a kite this time, but with a weighted rope thrown by the strongest arms. The connection is made. The pull begins. Here's your mainstream historical fact, made vibrant. The Quechua ritual is a direct, unbroken cultural continuation of Inca technology and social organization. It is considered by UNESCO, which lists it as intangible cultural heritage, as a unique example of living history. This isn't a reenactment. It's the real thing. The knowledge isn't in a book, it's in the muscles and memories of the families who have done this for over 500 years. The Spanish tried to erase this knowledge. They failed. It survived in this one, stubborn, annual act of collective remembering. While the heavy cable pulling and high wire weaving are predominantly done by men, the entire endeavor is spiritually led and sustained by the women. The Paco might be male, but it is the women who prepare the sacred feast that fuels the work. More importantly, on the final day, as the two weaving teams from opposite sides approach the center, it is the women who gather on the cliffs above. They begin to sing. Their songs, called Waynus, are not for entertainment. They are incantations. The lyrics encourage the men, call upon the mountain spirits for support, and literally will the two sides of the bridge to meet safely. Their voices become the sonic girders of the structure. The bridge is woven by male hands, but it is sung into existence by female voices. It is a profound partnership. The tension builds as the two weaving teams, working from the anchors toward the center, close the final gap. The last few sticks are laid. The final, central knot, the marriage of the two halves, must be tied. Historians still argue whether this moment in Inca times involved a human sacrifice or offering, a dark myth that often clings to great ancient works. There is no archaeological evidence for it in bridge construction. The modern ritual suggests the opposite. The offering is one of labor, focus, and community. The final lashing is tied with great solemnity. Then, a celebration erupts. Music starts. There is dancing on the newly completed bridge, a defiant, joyful stamping on the very embodiment of their effort. The first symbolic crossings are made by community elders. You stand on the new Keswachaka as the sun sets on the fourth day. It smells green and alive. It feels taut, eager. It is the same bridge as yesterday, and yet completely new. Every fiber has been replaced. The pattern is identical, but the material is fresh. This is the ultimate patient art. The art of letting go of the old completely, trusting that the knowledge and the community are strong enough to build it again from nothing. The bridge is not an object. It is a cycle. It is a promise, renewed every year, that some threads must never be allowed to break. The great bridges like Keswachaka are the celebrities, the ones that get the festival and the visitors. But the empire was stitched together by dozens, perhaps hundreds, of lesser-known spans, each a vital capillary in the circulatory system of Tawantinsuyu. Who took care of those? Who ensured that the humble bridge over the rushing Pampas River or the steep gorge near a minor administrative center didn't fray into oblivion? This is where we meet the social machinery of maintenance, a system so elegantly woven into the fabric of society that it was almost invisible. You are now part of a bridge's permanent, rotating crew, not as a hero, but as a custodian. Your village is one day's travel from a choka of regional importance. It's not grand, maybe 60 feet across, but it connects your potato fields to a major Kapaknan, royal road, that leads to a storage depot. According to the intricate Inca system of labor tax, your Ailu is responsible for this bridge's upkeep. This isn't a vague responsibility, it's codified. A keeping administrator in the local governor's office has a knot that records your community's maintenance schedule. When your time comes, a runner arrives. The message isn't a request. It's a reminder of an obligation as natural as planting or harvest. A work party must be assembled, tools and fiber gathered, and the journey to the bridge must begin. You arrive at the bridge with a team from your village. The first task is the inspection. You walk its length slowly, your hands never leaving the cables, your eyes scanning. You are reading the bridge like a physician reads a body. You look for fraying where the deck ropes rub against the handrail cables. You test the tightness of the lashings on the anchor stones, looking for any slippage or wear from rain and wind. You check the deck for broken sticks or sections that have become too spongy from use. Every defect is noted, discussed in low murmurs. The work is quiet, methodical, and deeply responsible. A missed weak spot isn't just poor craftsmanship, it's a potential death sentence for a neighbor, a relative, or an imperial messenger. The repairs begin. Some of you harvest fresh ichu from the nearby slopes. Others, skilled in rope making, sit and spin new cords for the lashings. Those with the steadiest nerves venture onto the deck to do the weaving repairs, replacing worn sticks and tightening the weave. It's not a full rebuild, like Keswachaka. It's more like tending a garden, weeding, pruning, supporting. There's a deep satisfaction in it. You are not building a monument for the ages, you are preserving a tool for your community. Your labor directly ensures your aunt can take her textiles to market, that your cousin can bring lime from the quarry for the community's new house, that news from the capital can reach your valley. Here's your mainstream historical fact: the glue of the system. The MITA labor tax was the engine of the Inca state. But it was organized with a keen understanding of fairness and sustainability. Communities were assigned tasks based on their proximity to the resource or project and their traditional skills. A village near a bridge maintained that bridge. A village near a stone quarry provided labor for masonry. The work rotations were designed not to exhaust a single community but to distribute the burden. Your turn came, you served, and then you returned to your fields while another Ailu took over another piece of infrastructure. It was a vast, decentralized system of collective ownership and care. The state provided the coordination and the grand vision, but the hands that maintained the empire were always local. How did they keep track of all this? How did they know which community owed maintenance on which bridge, and when? We've mentioned the quipu, the knot record. But specifically, the administrator might have a quipu where different colored strings represented different valleys, the knot types and positions representing specific bridges, and the number of knots indicating the cycle of years or seasons until the next maintenance was due. When your work was complete, the bridge master of your crew might even tie a new, specific knot into a smaller quipu as a record of the work done, a sort of ancient, fibrous receipt for services rendered. Your sweat and skill were literally knotted into the administrative memory of the state. This system created a profound, intimate relationship between people and place. You didn't just live near a bridge. You were of it. Its sighs in the wind were familiar to you. You knew which planks creaked in the cold morning. You had a personal history with every cable you'd ever tightened. Historians still argue whether this deep localization of maintenance led to variations in bridge design and quality across the empire, creating good bridges and sketchy ones based on the diligence and skill of their assigned communities. It's a reasonable debate. A bridge maintained by a community of master weavers would likely be a tighter, more elegant piece of work than one tended by a village better known for its herding. But the system's genius was that even the sketchy bridge got maintained, because the obligation was inescapable. It was a social safety net made of grass. As you tie off the final new lashing and step back onto solid ground, you feel a quiet pride, but also relief. Your duty is done. The bridge is safe for another season. You pack your tools and begin the walk home, leaving the bridge to its silent watch over the river. You don't look back with the awe of a tourist. You look back with the calm scrutiny of a guardian. It's in good hands. For now. And you know that when the time comes again, another set of hands from your community will be here, reading the same cables, listening to the same whispers of wear. The cycle is unbroken. The patient art continues. The bridge is now taut, strong, and singing with readiness. But a bridge that no one crosses is just a sculpture, a question posed to an uncaring gorge. Now, we give it its answer. We put it to work. You are no longer a builder or a maintainer. You are a user, a critical component in the system. Specifically, you are a chuzki, one of the famed runners of the Inca Empire. Your life is motion, and the rope bridges are the staccato beats in the rhythm of your run, the moments where the oath falls away and your faith in human ingenuity must be absolute. You approach the bridge at a steady, ground-eating lope, the tutuma shell trumpet at your belt bouncing against your hip. Your lungs bone pleasantly in the thin air. You were born to this altitude. In the small pouch slung across your chest, you carry a quipu, a knot record of census data from a nearby valley, destined for the regional administrator a day's hard run to the west. You are a living nerve impulse, carrying information along the empire's spinal cord. The bridge is a synapse. You don't slow to a careful walk. That's for merchants and llamas. You have a schedule kept not by clocks, but by the sun and the relay stations. You hit the bridge deck at a run, but it's a specialized gate. You don't fight the bounce, you use it. With each footfall, you push off slightly from the yielding surface, gaining a little spring in your step. Your arms are out for balance, but your torso is loose, absorbing the sway. Your eyes are locked on the far anchor point. The world narrows to the woven path ahead and the drum of your own heart. The canyon wind plucks at your tunic. The bridge groans and creaks in protest under your pounding feet, a chorus of strain you've learned to interpret as health, not distress. A silent bridge is a dead bridge. This one is shouting its vitality. You are the embodiment of a mainstream historical fact that still astounds. The Inca courier system could relay a message or a small, light item like fresh seafood from the coast to the highland capital of Cusco, a distance of over 300 kilometers, in under 24 hours. This was faster than the Pony Express. The secret wasn't just the runner's endurance, it was the infrastructure. A network of tambos, way stations, spaced the runners apart, and critically, these rope bridges that allowed the chasquis to run in nearly straight lines over impossible terrain. Without the bridges, the message would have to descend and climb every canyon, adding days. The bridges turned a rugged, vertical world into a flat, runnable diagram. What did a chasqui think about while sprinting over a swaying fiber span above certain death? Probably not the grandeur of the empire. More likely, his lunch. Or whether the runner at the next tambo would be awake and ready for the handoff, or if he'd have to blow his trumpet to rouse the lazy oaf. His focus would be on the feel of the deck under his sandals, the sound of his own breathing, the weight of the quipu pouch. The danger was background noise, a professional hazard. He might even have superstitions. Always step with the left foot first onto the bridge, or whisper a name to the wind. The sublime and the mundane always share the road. As you reach the far side, your foot hits solid earth with a jolt that travels up your spine. The transition is always startling, from the lively, giving fiber to the unyielding, silent stone of the trail. You don't pause. You keep running, the bridge already fading behind you, just another stride in a 1,000-stride day. But for that brief, airborne minute, you were more than a man. You were an idea in transit, a piece of data flowing across a gap in the world. The bridge facilitated that. It translated you from one state to another. Historians still argue whether the primary purpose of this incredible communication network was military control, economic coordination, or the prestige and ritual movement of the emperor and his court. The answer, of course, is all three. A rebellion in the north required fast military orders. A poor potato harvest in one region required the swift redistribution of food from state storehouses. The Sapa Inca's desire for fresh fish required, well, fast fish. But as you run, your purpose feels singular. You are the connection. The bridge was the moment of pure connection, where the path itself demanded your complete trust. A broken quipu knot could be retied. A delayed message could be forgiven. But a mistrustful step on the bridge? That had no recovery. You run on, the image of the next canyon already forming in your mind's eye, the next bridge waiting. Your life is a series of these leaps of faith, strung together by trails of stone and dust. The bridges are the exclamation points in the long, run-on sentence of your route. They are the pauses for breath, the moments of maximum focus, where the consequence of failure is so absolute that it clarifies everything. For the chasqui, the bridge isn't an obstacle. It's the essence of the journey. It is the proof that the empires can indeed conquer geography, not by blasting through it, but by weaving over it, one graceful, swaying, terrifying strand at a time. Not everything that crosses the bridge is a fleet-footed messenger or a swift military detachment. Now, shift your weight. Feel the slower, deeper groan of the cables. Hear the rhythmic, clacking trot of hooves on the woven sticks. Smell the dusty, animal scent of wool and dry dung. You are a lamaroo, a driver of a llama train, and your bridge is not a synapse for information, but an artery for commerce. This is where the empire's economy pulses, a steady flow of goods carried on the backs of stoic, spitting camels of the Andes. Your train is a dozen strong, each animal neatly tied nose to tail. They are laden with sacks of freeze-dried potatoes, siechuno, bales of prized vicuna wool, blocks of salt from the highland mines, or perhaps ornate pottery from a specialized village. This is the bulk transport. The empire's famous state warehouses, the quolkas, were filled by journeys like yours. You guide the lead llama onto the bridge deck. It hesitates. Llamas are not fools. They see the gap, feel the unsteadiness. You coax it with a soft click of your tongue and a gentle tug on its tether. It takes a tentative step, then another. Its long neck sways, counterbalancing the strange motion beneath its feet. Now the bridge reveals another facet of its genius. The spaced sticks of the deck are perfect for cloven hoofs. They provide grip and prevent slipping. The llamas, once they commit, adopt a careful, deliberate pacing. Their weight is distributed evenly, a plodding, rhythmic load that the bridge is perfectly tuned to handle. The sway caused by their crossing is a slow, ponderous roll, different from the quick jolt of a running human or the chaotic shudder of a panicked animal. You walk beside them, one hand on the guide rope, your own steps in time with theirs. The journey across becomes a slow procession, a meditation on weight and balance. You can hear the difference in the bridge's voice, a lower, more resonant groaning from the main cables as they shoulder the sustained burden. This is the mainstream historical reality. The Inca economy was a redistributive one, with no currency markets as we know them. Goods were produced as a tax in kind, stored by the state, and redistributed to the population, the military, and the nobility. This entire system relied on transportation. The llama was the only pack animal, and the rope bridges were the only way to move their cargoes across the deep ravines that separated production zones from storage centers and population hubs. Without the bridges, the economy collapses into isolated, unsustainable pockets. The humble llama train, crossing a humble grass bridge, was what kept the empire from tearing itself apart along its geographic seams. Llamas have personalities, and not all of them are suited for bridge crossing. A skittish llama could cause a disaster, spooking and potentially tangling the whole train. So, experienced lameros would have their bridge lead llamas, calm, steady veterans who had made the crossing dozens of times. These animals were valuable not just for their strength, but for their nerves of steel. They'd be decorated with tassels or specific ear notches marking their elite status. Furthermore, to prevent the dreaded llama spit, a foul-smelling, stomach-content projectile, from causing a mid-bridge incident, drivers would often keep the animals content with occasional handfuls of the treats they carried, like dried maize or lichen, making the crossing a positive, snack-filled experience. Happy llama, stable bridge. As you reach the midpoint, the sag is deepest. The llamas bunch slightly, their soft humming filling the air, a sound they make when content or slightly anxious. You look back. The line of animals, the bulky silhouettes of their loads against the bright sky, looks like a caravan crossing the spine of a giant, sleeping beast. The bridge is doing its job, bending but not breaking, sharing the strain across its entire length. You feel a wave of gratitude, for the bridge, for the steady animals, for the communities that maintain this path so your livelihood can flow. Historians still argue whether these economic bridges were public infrastructure open to all, or if their use was controlled by the state, with tolls or permissions required for major commercial trains. Given the Inca's penchant for control and record-keeping, it's likely that major bridges near administrative centers had a keeper or recorder, someone who noted the type and quantity of goods crossing, tying a new knot on a quipu for every 10 sacks of chuno or every bale of wool. Your passage wasn't just a journey. It was a data point in the Empire's vast inventory. The bridge was a measuring device, a sieve through which the material wealth of the realm was counted and conveyed. Finally, your lead llama steps off the woven deck onto the solid trail on the far side. It lets out a soft, snuffling breath, as if it, too, is relieved. You guide the rest of the train off, one by one. The bridge, now unburdened, gives a final, deep sigh and begins to return to its resting state, its slow sway gradually diminishing. You look at it with new eyes. It's not just a feat of engineering or a spiritual symbol. It's a workplace, a conveyor belt, a market stall suspended in the sky. It has just performed its most essential, unsung duty. It allowed value to move from one hand to another. And tomorrow, it will do it again. The world you've been walking in, this intricate, humming network of fiber and faith, is about to be viewed through a very different, and much more terrified, set of eyes. The year is now 1533. The air still smells of grass and cold stone, but a new scent lingers on the trails, the sour tang of unwashed European wool, the acrid smell of gunpowder residue, and the metallic reek of fear. You are no longer an Inca subject. You are a Spanish conquistador, part of Francisco Pizarro's ragged band of fortune seekers. You have heard tales of a kingdom of gold in the mountains. You have fought, schemed, and marched to the heart of it. And now, your path is blocked by one of its most baffling creations, a rope bridge. Your steel-edged world is about to meet the tensile one, and your confidence is about to take a very long, very shaky fall. Your company halts at the canyon's edge. You stare. Your captain, a veteran of European wars, spits a curse. Un puente de paja. A bridge of straw? It looks like a peasant's footbridge, not a route for men of destiny. You are clad in a heavy steel breastplate and helmet. Your sword is at your side, a matchlock arquebus slung over your shoulder. You weigh, with all your gear, perhaps twice what an Inca porter does. The idea of trusting your life, and more importantly your chance at plunder, to this basket hanging over a drop of several hundred feet, feels like insanity. You have crossed stone Roman bridges in Spain. You understand permanence, solidity, mass. This swaying, groaning thing embodies everything you don't understand about this new world. Its lightness, its flexibility, its apparent flimsiness that somehow endures. Your Inca guides and porters, now your captives or reluctant allies, watch your panic with impassive faces. They step onto the bridge without hesitation, showing you its strength. It means nothing. Their faith is not yours. To you, their confidence is either idiocy or a trap. You imagine the cables, cunningly sawed partway through, waiting to snap under the weight of armored men. You picture yourself, a glittering insect, tumbling into the gorge, your dreams of gold ending as a red stain on distant rocks. This is not an engineering challenge, it's a psychological siege. Here is the mainstream historical fact, seen through the grim lens of conquest. The Spanish invasion's success relied on incredible mobility and shock, moving quickly along the very Inca road network to capture Atahualpa at Cajamarca. But their technological arrogance met its match in Inca infrastructure. The roads they could handle, they were roads, albeit steeper and better made than many in Europe. But the bridges were a nightmare. Chroniclers like Pedro de Cieza de Leon wrote with palpable dread about having to cross these bridges of vines and osiers, willow, describing how they swayed as if one was at sea, and how the Spanish horses, utterly terrified, had to be blindfolded and dragged across, their hooves punching through the decking. What was one of the first things the conquistadors did upon forcing themselves across these terrifying spans? They often insisted on adding their own improvements. Thinking the grass cables insufficient, They would sometimes try to reinforce them by wrapping them with their own ropes or even attempting to attach wooden planks to the deck. This often had the opposite of the intended effect. The rigid planks would catch the wind and strain the flexible structure in new ways. Their foreign ropes, of different material and tension, could create uneven stress points. Their attempts to civilize the bridge frequently made it more dangerous, a perfect metaphor for the colonial project itself, a clumsy, ignorant overlay that misunderstood the profound sophistication of what it sought to replace. You are ordered to cross. There is no alternative. You unbuckle your breastplate, your hands fumbling with the cold steel. You strip down to your padded jerkin. You leave your heavy helmet behind. Every piece of armor you remove feels like a surrender, a layer of your identity and safety being peeled away. You step onto the deck. It feels obscenely insubstantial. The sway is immediate, and your stomach, already knotted with anxiety, lurches. You grip the handrail cables, but they are thick and round, hard to get a solid hold on with gauntleted hands. You shuffle forward, one excruciating step at a time, your eyes wide, your breath coming in short gasps. The bridge creaks and moans under your foreign weight. You are certain every sound is a death rattle. Historians still argue whether the Inca, in their resistance after the initial capture of Atahualpa, ever deliberately sabotaged these bridges to slow or trap Spanish forces. It would have been a brilliant, asymmetrical tactic. But the evidence suggests the Spanish fear of sabotage was often paranoia. The bridges were simply doing what they always did: moving, groaning, flexing. The Spanish simply didn't speak their language. To them, the bridge's normal song was a dirge. You finally stumble onto the far side, your legs trembling with more than fatigue. You look back at the bridge, now seeing not just a crossing, but a symbol. It is a boundary between their world and yours, and you have just passed through it, humiliated and vulnerable. You put your armor back on, but the feeling of security doesn't return. You have learned a disquieting lesson. In this strange land, the greatest strength might not lie in what is hard and unyielding, but in what is soft, flexible, and patient. And that is a thought more terrifying than any canyon. The conquest was not just a military event, it was an ideological steamroller. The Spanish victory solidified into colonial rule, and with it came a new vision of order. A vision of straight lines, right angles, stone and mortar, and the cross. The flexible, organic, whispering world of the Inca had to be not just defeated, but erased and overwritten with something permanent and civilized. And so, the decree came down, from viceroys and bishops: replace the rope bridges. Replace them with proper stone arch bridges, like those of Roman Spain. The puentes de Paja were deemed primitive, dangerous, pagan. They were a reminder of a subjugated people's ingenuity, and that memory had to be broken. The order to destroy was, in its way, an act of profound fear. You are now a colonial administrator, a corregidor, perhaps, or a priest assigned to a remote parish. You have a mandate. You survey the canyon where a rope bridge has served for generations. You see its elegant, swooping line. You also see its impermanence. It needs constant care from the very people whose spirit you are trying to break. To you, it represents backwardness, dependence on superstition, a lack of firmness. You draw up plans, request funds from Lima, and hire or conscript indigenous labor to build a stone bridge nearby. The project is slow, expensive, and fraught with the new challenges of a fractured society. The stones are heavy, the mortar unpredictable. But it will stand, you tell yourself, for centuries. It will be a monument to the new, unshakable order. The old rope bridge, once the vital artery, is now an obstacle to progress. You order it cut down. On a chosen day, workers from the local communities, the same hands that built and maintained it, are forced to sever the cables. There is no ceremony, only the grim efficiency of an executioner's axe. The great QSW cables, under immense tension, don't just fall, they recoil. They whip back toward the cliffs with a sound like a thunderclap of tearing fabric, before tumbling, lifeless and slow, into the gorge below. The community watches in silence. It is not just a bridge being destroyed. It is a cycle being broken. A promise being revoked. A pathway of memory being severed. Here's the mainstream historical fact that fueled this destruction. The Spanish colonial economy was different. It relied on wheeled carts and heavy, hoofed animals like mules and horses to transport ore from the silver mines. A rope bridge could not support a loaded cart. The new stone arch bridges were a practical necessity for the new extractive economy. But the motivation was never just practical. It was cultural genocide. Replacing the bridge was a physical manifestation of replacing a worldview, one of dynamic, communal reciprocity with one of static, imposed hierarchy. Not every community complied quietly. In some remote canyons, when the Spanish engineer or priest left, the people might quietly rebuild their rope bridge a short distance away from the new stone one. The stone bridge was for the authorities, for the carts, for the tithe collectors. The hidden rope bridge was for them, for their traditional roots, their quiet commerce, their personal journeys. It became an act of silent resistance, a secret thread of continuity. In other places, they maintained the stone bridge as required, but kept the knowledge of rope twisting alive through smaller, domestic projects, hanging footbridges over irrigation canals, or reinforcing roofs with the old patterns. The art didn't die. It went underground, it miniaturized, it persisted in the margins. The new stone bridges rose, solemn and grey. They were impressive. They did not sway. They did not groan. They simply were. They represented a new kind of time, linear, monumental, aiming for eternity. But in their rigidness, they were also brittle. The earthquakes that the rope bridges danced with would, over the centuries, crack and topple many of these stone replacements. The colonial insistence on a foreign concept of permanence in a land defined by seismic impermanence was its own kind of tragic irony. Historians still argue whether the campaign to eradicate the rope bridges was a conscious, systematic policy or a more haphazard, locally driven process of modernization. The truth likely lies in a bitter blend. The Crown and Church issued grand directives, but the on-the-ground reality was driven by individual officials, priests, and mining operators who saw the bridges as impediments to their control and profit. The destruction was patchy, incomplete, but its intent was clear: to cut the sinews of the old empire and replace them with the bones of the new. You stand by the finished stone arch, a solid, silent testament to your will. Below, in the shadows of the canyon, you might catch a glimpse of frayed, ancient grass cables caught on a rock, or hear a story from an old man about the bridge that used to sing in the wind. You have won. The stone bridge stands. But in the quiet defiance of a remembered twist, in the hidden knowledge of a knot, you sense you have not fully conquered. You have severed the thread, but you have not broken the hand that knows how to spin it. The patient art has been wounded, but it has learned a new patience, the patience of waiting. Centuries have passed. The stone arch bridges have cracked, been repaired, been replaced by steel and concrete. The world has mapped the Andes from satellites, paved highways that switch back through the mountains, and built steel girder bridges that span canyons in a single, arrogant leap. The age of the fiber bridge is over. Except it isn't. In a few forgotten folds of the mountains, in communities that modernity's wave washed around but not through, the last custodians hold fast. You are no longer in the past. You are in the living present, visiting a village where the old way isn't history, it's Tuesday. You arrive not as a conqueror or a subject, but as a visitor. The air is still thin, the wind still sharp. But now there is the distant buzz of a motorbike on a high road, the flicker of a solar panel on a tin roof. Yet, the community's gaze is turned inwards, towards the canyon they have always watched over. Here, the MITA is no longer an imperial tax, but a voluntary, sacred duty to their own heritage. The families who maintain the last great bridge, or perhaps a smaller one known only to them, are not reenactors. They are practitioners. The knowledge didn't survive in a library. It survived in muscle memory, in the stories told while twisting rope, in the specific way an elder's eye assesses the wear on a cable. You meet a man named Francisco or perhaps Gregorio. His hands are a topographic map of a lifetime of this work, calloused, scarred, fingers thick and strong. He shows you a coil of itchy rope he made that morning. The motion of his hands is fluid, unconscious. He could do it in the dark. He speaks of the bridge not as a thing, but as a relative. It gets tired, he might say. It needs to eat new grass. For him, the bridge's annual renewal at Keswichaka or the more local, quieter maintenance of a lesser-known span is as essential a part of the agricultural and ceremonial calendar as planting potatoes or celebrating a saint's day. It is woven into their cosmology. The bridge is a being that connects not just two pieces of land, but the people to their ancestors and to the spirit of the place. Here is the mainstream, modern fact. The survival of this knowledge is a fragile miracle. It persisted through centuries of colonialism, forced labor in mines and haciendas, the chaos of independence, and the homogenizing pressure of the 20th century nation-state. It survived because it was too useful to forget in remote areas, and because it became a core, unshakable part of cultural identity. Now, it faces new threats: the migration of young people to cities for work and education, the allure of easier, modern jobs, the slow erosion of the communal land where the special itchy grass grows. The last custodians are often elderly. The chain of transmission is as delicate as one of their own pilot lines. The very forces that threaten the tradition are also helping to preserve it. Tourism. The Keswichaka Festival is now a major event, drawing visitors from around the world. This brings money and attention. The community charges a small fee for visitors to cross the newly woven bridge. Suddenly, the ancient skill has economic value. A young man might learn the ropes, literally, not just out of duty, but because it can provide a livelihood as a guide or demonstrator. UNESCO recognition brings prestige and some funding. The Peruvian government now promotes it as cultural heritage. The bridge, which once served the Inca state, now serves the global curiosity economy. It's a Faustian bargain of sorts, but one that might just keep the knowledge alive. You sit with the elders and the younger apprentices around a fire in the evening. The talk is a mix of Quechua and Spanish. They argue good-naturedly about the proper tightness for the final twist, or which side of the mountain yields the toughest grass this year. Historians still argue whether the techniques used today are 100% identical to those of the Inca, or if they have undergone subtle, necessary evolution over 5 centuries. Listening to this debate by the fire, you hear the answer. Of course they have evolved. The tools are slightly different, the motivations are blended, the context is utterly changed. But the core, the understanding of tension, the communal rhythm of construction, the sacred relationship with the material, that is a direct echo. It is not a frozen fossil, it is a living tradition, which means it breathes and adapts while holding true to its heart. The firelight dances on their faces, old and young. The bridge is out there in the dark, a silent presence. The elders know that with them may pass the last true, unbroken link to the world that built it. The youth feel the weight of that legacy, but also see a phone in their pocket, a road out of the valley. The bridge's future hangs in this balance. in this space between the fire and the dark, between memory and the modern world. The last custodians are not just maintaining a structure. They are holding a door open between eras, hoping someone will choose to walk through it and carry the burden forward. For now, they hold fast. Their patience is the final, and perhaps greatest, art. It is dawn. A soft, pink light bleeds into the deep blue over the Andes, slowly revealing the contours of the sacred canyon. The air is still, holding its breath. You stand once more at the edge, but this time, you are not a harvester, a weaver, a runner, or a conqueror. You are simply a witness at the end of a very long story. Before you is the Keswachaka, or perhaps one of its lesser-known siblings, having just been reborn days before. It is at its strongest, its fibers still holding the green memory of the field, its weave tight and confident. This is your moment to cross, not out of necessity, but out of homage. To walk the final thread of our journey, to feel beneath your feet the summation of 1,000 years of patience. You take off your modern shoes. The connection needs to be direct. You place your bare foot on the woven deck. The cool, rough texture of the grass is a shock, a primal feeling. You take the first step, then another. The bridge, sensitive to the slightest weight, begins its familiar, deep sway. But this morning, in the calm air, it is a gentle rocking, a cradle's motion. You walk slowly, deliberately, not fighting the movement but settling into it. Each footfall is a quiet percussion on a drum made of earth and sky. The only sounds are the creak of the fibers, the distant, eternal whisper of the river far below, and the beat of your own heart. You look ahead, following the curve of the handrail cables as they sweep down and up. You are walking on a line drawn between two worlds, the physical world of rock and air, and the human world of memory and obligation. Every strand under your feet contains a story, the laughter of the harvesters, the bone in the rope twister's hands, the focused silence of the weavers suspended in air, the terrified prayers of the conquistador, the defiant song of the women, the weary pride of the maintainer. The bridge is not just grass. It is a library, an archive of labor and faith written in a language of twist and tension. You reach the very center, the lowest point of the sag. Here, the sway is most profound. You stop. You hold the cables and let the bridge move you. You look down the length of the canyon, walls of stone that have seen this thread appear and reappear for generations. You are a tiny, temporary weight on an eternal cycle. The bridge holds you not because it is rigid, but because it is resilient. It has survived not by resisting change, but by accepting it, by being renewed again and again. It is a lesson in humility and in strength. The mightiest stone can be cracked by an earthquake. But a humble rope of grass, when cared for, when remembered, can outlast empires. You complete the crossing, stepping onto the far side. The solid ground feels strange, almost unwelcoming in its stubborn stillness. You turn and look back at the bridge. It hangs in the morning light, golden and serene, a single brushstroke across the face of the deep. It is complete. It is waiting. It has fulfilled its ancient purpose once more, to connect, to bear witness, to endure just long enough for the next hands to take up the task. And so, we leave it there, suspended in the dawn. We leave the last custodians to their watch. We leave the grass to grow for next year's harvest. The patient art continues, a quiet, stubborn heartbeat in the high, thin air of the mountains. A breath, in and out. A promise, made and remade. A thread, forever being woven across the void. And so, the story of the rope bridge settles around you now, not as a tale of dramatic conquest or glittering treasure, but as something far deeper and more enduring, a testament to the quiet, persistent strength of community, and to the profound wisdom of building with the world rather than simply upon it. Imagine that bridge, hanging in the mist of your mind's eye, a gentle, swaying silhouette against a star-dusted Andean night. Feel its patience seeping into your own thoughts, slowing the spin of the day's worries, reminding you that some of the strongest things in this life are not loud and rigid, but soft, flexible, and woven together by countless hands over time. The wind that rustles through its cables is the same wind that cools your cheek now. The careful, trusting step of the llama train is a rhythm not so different from your own slowing breath. All that fierce, focused human intention, the blistered hands, the chanted prayers, the eyes fixed on the far side, all of it resolves now into a single, peaceful image, a graceful line across a great darkness, proving that connection is always possible, as long as there is the will to twist the straw, to tie the knot, to take that first trembling step forward. Let the gentle sway of that distant bridge rock you towards sleep. Let its enduring, renewable strength be a comfort. It was built, it was used, it was cared for, and when the time came, it was lovingly rebuilt. So too can you release the tensions of your day, trusting that what is essential will be renewed in rest. The bridge is safe. The keepers are vigilant. The mountains stand guard. And you, listener, can now cross over into dreams, carried by the quiet certainty that some threads, though they may sway and sigh, are woven to hold.